Welcome back. This is still New Day. Now we are getting right into our first conversation for this morning. We'll be discussing the gender perspective of digital content creation. The gender perspective of digital content creation. And with me this morning is Amaka Bobby Umano. She's a broadcaster and a digital content creator. Good morning, Amaka. How are you this morning? Can you hear me? If you can hear me, could you please unmute your mic? Good morning. Can you hear me? All right, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking, events occur, and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.
Here.
We apologize for that little mix-up. We are still starting off with our conversation with our guest Amaka this morning. Amaka, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you.
So we are discussing a gender's perspective on global content creation. Let's start off with you as a content creator. How do you navigate representation in your work as a lady?
Okay, well, I would say that I am that biased, being a woman in the field. And of course, you should expect that I give women the pride of place. And so in my content, I try to promote women. I try to curate and create content that inspire and celebrate women as well. And in the course of my interviews, I try to also profile women who are doing remarkable things in their areas of specialization and so much more. But of course, we know we cannot do life alone. We need men to support us. And for that reason, I always say for women and those whose businesses benefit women and their family. So that's basically it.
Okay, now what are the implications of gender stereotypes in media? And I know you're both in media and then you are in content as a broadcaster. What are the implications of gender stereotypes? Are there gender stereotypes, and how does this affect media and advertising?
Yes, of course, there are gender stereotypes. Of course, if we're going back to facts and figures, statistics from an industry expert posits that women occupy a staggering 65% of the entire population of content creators or creatives in the new media space. By this, I'm referring to people who are in the blog field, in the social media, podcast, and video channels. So you tend to find more men than women playing in these areas. Therefore, yes, indeed, there's a gap. But of course, it goes to show that what we see is a representation of the larger society. You and I can agree that the media is actually a microcosm of the entire society. So the media, in many situations, is a reflection of what is obtainable in real life. So we tend to have more men than women, and these are for some obvious reasons. For instance, we begin with access to funding. Many times, many women who may want to play in the field of content creation may not have adequate funds to support themselves in this area. Content creation, of course, require resources. If we're talking about data, you need money to recharge your data and be able to function online. You need money to create a crew that would assist and support you in your production, from your cameramen to your script writers to your producers, depending on how big or small you want to play in that field. But nonetheless, even though many content creators, I call them powerhouses because they are everything given unto themselves, that the presenters, that the script writers, that the cameramen or women making use of their phones, that the producers, that the marketers, that the digital marketers too, because you also find them online trying to promote their content. So women to this regard can easily be shortchanged. Of course, we know how it is said that it's a man's world, but all the same, we also know that women are trying as much as they can to also be visible. And so visibility is not something that comes easy for women, especially when we begin to talk about issues like self-censorship, issues like imposter syndrome. The truth is that because women are reared or nurtured differently, many women find it difficult to have that self-confidence to project themselves, to promote themselves online. So self-censorship comes in. An average woman begins to wonder, if I produce this content and put it on air or online, how would people perceive me? How would people judge me? How would people scrutinize me? How would it affect my image as a woman or as a young girl who wants to get a husband? Will I still be able to have access to people who will still see me as a good woman? And so much more. Imposter syndrome also comes in. You begin to ask yourself as a woman, am I qualified? Do I have the right resources? Do I have the right content? Would people like my content? Will I be as good as Miss or Mrs. ABC? And by the time you know it, they would eventually decide that, you know what, this is not for me and I can't do it. And so all these and even more goes a long way in discouraging women to compete favorably on this platform and be able to position themselves, especially as digital content, digital marketing is taking over, much more the artificial intelligence. You discover that many women also are disadvantaged because many tend to think like, oh, well, technology is not for women, it's for men. I don't need to be here. I need to go do something else. But that's not true. And the truth is that with artificial intelligence now, there are lots of opportunities. So it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. What matters is how are you able to not just access information, but also utilize this information to create a content that would create positive change in the society. And that takes us to another area, which is niche. many women tend to niche down to areas that are stereotypical. For instance, you find many women being comfortable creating content on fashion, style, beauty, and the likes. They many times do not see themselves as people who can create content that has to do with tech, that has to do with innovations, politics, and so much more. But of course, we know that women have the ability to also play in these areas. So the more we give women the opportunity, the more we realize that cutting edge innovations can come from women. It doesn't matter your gender. And therefore, it's important for us to check our narratives when we are representing women in the media. What are those stereotypes that we tend to project? Do we tend to victimize, bring up or present women from the angle of a victim or the angle of a champion or a conqueror or a top executive or an authority or a thought leader or an expert in her field? These are things we need to consciously take cognizance of. Again, we have to check our images, those stereotypes of images where we see women as maybe half-cladded individuals who must be of a certain body type to be accepted in the society? Or are we saying to women, come as you are, come as God has created you because you are unique and you have a purpose and you have a gift and you have a special reason for existing at this time and age. So come as you are with your talents, with your unique gifts, because you have the ability to impact somebody's life. We need to really take cognizance of that. Again, are we checking the numbers? Are we creating balance whereby if we are projecting this gender as winners, we're also juxtaposing it with other gender who are also winning, and it becomes a level playing ground. Again, mainstream gender perspective comes in. When we apply gender lens in what we're doing, it goes a long way in supporting many women to bring forth their talent for a better future, not just for themselves, but for the society at large. Suffice to say that today, digital space had created another source of wealth. And we know that when women are empowered, the family, the community, the society at large benefit from all of these. So when we begin to understand that we have to bring forth our gender lens when it comes to content creation, it will not just help more women to become more financially capable, but also help the society to develop economically, because this will add in the long run to the economic development of the nation.
All right, thank you. Now, you've said earlier that we know that the system is dominated more in content creation down here in the country by mostly women. And like you mentioned, women are not so interested in big topics. Now, when some women dare to, discuss these sacred topics that people assume are, restricted to men, they get backlashes and all of that. And you also mentioned having to level up. How do you think we should, strike a balance between women keeping at what is probably less controversial, and then we wouldn't have situations where women are overstepping, quote unquote, and also having them not be stereotypic in the dressing, the fashion, the makeup, and the cooking?
All right, first of all, I would say, of course, as is often said, that charity begins at home. By saying home now, I'm referring to the woman herself. We have to start with self-awareness. Every woman needs to have a retrospective inspection into herself, first of all, who are you? Answer that question as a woman. Who are you? Why are you on this earth? The truth is that there's a purpose. And the truth is that we exist in one of the best era in this world. Why do I say that? Because I know as a broadcaster, when I started my career, you are either a broadcaster or you are not. You don't have access to camera. It's either, in those days, we had the Betacam, the VHS, and so on and so forth. But then it appeared to be a special preserve for journalists, for broadcasters, for those in the media space. But look at it today. The mere fact that you have a phone means you already automatically have access to the camera. So it means you can actually broadcast from anywhere. You can actually report from anywhere. You can present from anywhere, irrespective of whether you are a professional broadcaster or not. So what it means is that every woman, as a matter of fact, everybody has access to the media space, to the online space, to the world, as it were. Gone are the days when you probably have to record first, take back to the studio to burn it, edit it, and then prepare to present or broadcast it. Today, we're talking about real-time broadcasting. We're talking about real-time reporting. We're talking about real-time presentation. We're talking about real-time creation of content. So what it means is that as a woman, you can actually capitalize on these advantages and be able to take yourself to the next level. That's, of course, when you begin to think about it as a trained broadcaster, as a trained journalist, you begin to also wonder, what then is your role? But of course, that takes me to the next answer to your question, education. Every woman needs to get the knowledge, the skill. By education here, I don't mean it must be a formal education, no. I'm referring to skills, knowledge, ideas, and experiences that you feel you need to take yourself to where you want to be. Today, we know some of the international bodies who are offering certifications. And with these certifications, you don't necessarily need to take yourself to a certain height in education to access the skills you need in content creation. So this is another way by which we can bridge the gap. Women, or as a woman, you need to sit down, ask yourself, who am I? What's my goal? Where am I heading to? And what do I need to equip myself to take me to this stage? When you identify those apparatus or instruments or certifications or educations or skills or experiences you need, then you have started on the right note. Go get them, equip yourself, and then the world becomes your stepping stone.
Let's talk about you briefly. A broadcaster and a digital content creator. I know that, there are two separate worlds. How have you been able to balance the two, being a broadcaster and also having to set ring lights, stay in front of the camera and record content for the media?
Okay, well, I think the balance comes in the new media. As I mentioned before now, to be a broadcaster, a presenter, or a content creator, or a producer, you need to be on a TV or a radio station, a traditional TV or radio station. And before the digital, you have to be on a terrestrial TV or radio station. But it's different now. We're seeing online TV stations. We're seeing, as a matter of fact, I was discussing with a colleague last week A certain brand we all know that is into logistics and online commerce, e-commerce. Today, they also have a radio station and a TV station, online TV station. So you see, it's about leverage and it's about building a bridge because right now they are all overlapping. Talking about the new media, talking about the digitalization that happened in the recent past, and the fact that Nigeria is not being left behind. Even terrestrial stations or traditional TV and radio stations are finding it very, very indispensable to get on the online platform because that is the thing of today and is beginning to look like you're either digital or you're forgotten. So bridging that gap for me has become even easier because what you have on the traditional or terrestrial platform, you can replicate in real time online as a content creator and vice versa. So we've seen a situation whereby as a content creator, you know that whatever you decide to put out, either as a blogger, a social media expert, a podcaster, a video channel content creator, and what have you, you have in mind that you're now existing on a multimedia platform. So it's no longer a one platform for each audience, no. Rather, it's become multi-purpose. Therefore, you have to have it at the back of your head that you're creating multimedia content. So you make sure that every content you're creating must adapt to these multimedia platforms. If it's a long form video, you know already that this has to be able to be replicated or uploaded to different platforms, either in real time or as a post-production content. So that makes it easier. That mindset that you know that this content will go on every other platform, pari passu, and no longer for one distinct channel. So that really saves the day.
All right. So we've mentioned inclusion, we've mentioned that there are marginalization, the stereotypes towards women. My next question is, what roles does industry organization and advocacy groups, if there are, play in promoting diversity and inclusion in content creation, if there are?
Okay, well, I would say that it's all encompassed in a typical situation whereby you and I find ourselves right now talking about conversations like this. When we bring issues like this to the front burner, it goes a long way in sensitizing the public. And also, sometimes, things happen and we do not take cognizance of it. I mean, as a woman, probably you've been struggling with yourself as a content creator or as a beginner, and you've not really pinpointed what your challenges are. But with conversations like this, I'm sure that a woman somewhere would be able to say, oh, really? I think what I've really been suffering from is not lack of creativity. Rather, I've been battling imposter syndrome, whereby I've been thinking that, okay, I'm not worthy to present this content. I'm not worthy to do this. I'm not qualified to play in the tech and media industry. I'm not a trained journalist. I'm not a trained broadcaster. Therefore, I can't speak good English and so on and so forth. These conversations like this bring that consciousness and realization to parties and stakeholders in a way that after today, a woman who had listened to this conversation can actually say, okay, well, they mentioned that I can come as I am. So it means that even if I do not have the gift of the gab, even if I don't speak good English, I can actually create content in my local dialect. And guess what? Experience had shown that certain dialects also sell, and people who are within that language actually would love to hear you tell them things in that language they speak. So there's no barrier. It's about sensitization, it's about having conversations, it's about awareness, it's about support. I am aware that many people are creating pods, supporting one another to push their content online. So that's also a great way. Women groups, men groups, societies, faith-based organizations, and so much more. They're actually coming together to form pods whereby they're able to push one another. You're on air, I'm able to support you, you're on air, you're able to support me, and so on and so forth. And actions like that really would go a long way in changing the narrative. But again, I dare say that everything begins with the individual. You have to decide what you want to do, how you want to achieve it. But this becomes a reality when you have self-awareness. Again, just to say that everybody mustn't be a content creator. In as much as it's the rave of the moment, there are certain contents you see and you wonder, okay, well, do we really need to bring this online? And if yes, is it to this taste? How distasteful is it? And how accommodating and how inspiring is it? So everything rises and falls on the individual. Reason being that, unlike when it was a system, so to speak, there were bodies, there were censorships, and for that reason, everybody understands the law and ethics of the profession. Right now, it's flexible, it's untamed, it can even become uncontrollable sometimes, and censorship may not also come easy. Therefore, it means self-censorship comes in. You have to decide to what extent you want your content to be haywire, so to speak. Self-censorship means that you yourself have to understand that in as much as the profession, in quotes, is not binding on you, or the professional ethics is not binding on you, you also have to be ethical, bring about human ethics to guide you, to know to what extent what you want to share. And remember, as it is often said, the internet never forgets. So ask yourself what you're creating today, in few days to come, in few weeks to come, in few months to come, in few years to come. Would you still want to play back that video? Would you still want to reshare that text? Would you still want that image to go viral? Would you still want people to listen to that same audio and beat your chest and say, oh, yes, this is mine? Of course, we know that as human beings, we evolve. Life is dynamic and changes are inevitable. But the question is, your content of today, what is its lifespan? And then as it's transcending the test of time, are you also going to sit back and beat your chest and be happy at the content you're creating today, let's say 10 years from now? That's a food for thought. So let that guide as we produce and create our contents. Even as we try to build our visibility, we should also understand and remember our integrity.
Right. We should understand that whatever content we are creating, as much as we want to cash out, from the pool of content creations, we should also understand that we should create for posterity. So in the future,
right.
we will not look back and say, what was I thinking when I said this? Now, brings me to my final question. We want to create content for cash out. Just briefly, Tell me, why do you think people, when it comes to, sharing news and information, right? I'm sure you understand. Why do you think people are scared of, or maybe they, carefully do not want to partake of a situation where they have to share information or maybe support emotion? They just want to, I have a particular thing I do, I don't want to get into someone else's business and then spoil my own. Shouldn't there be as much as you want to create your content for your audience, shouldn't there be a conscious effort to improve lives and share true and genuine information out there?
All right. So your question, actually, I would answer it under personal branding. Really, when you have a personal brand, which probably you've built over time, you may not want to necessarily dabble into every conversation. You would consciously choose your battles. You will consciously choose your words. You will consciously choose your visibility in certain situations or topics or issues that may not serve your personal brand. Same goes for business brands. We know that there are issues you may not necessarily ever hear certain brands make commentaries on them. You may not hear certain business brands identify with certain issues or topics, no matter how controversial, no matter how topical it is. It's a deliberate brand decision for certain business brands or personal brands to keep away from certain issues. Reason being that sometimes when you meddle or interfere or unnecessarily decide to be a judge and jury in situations or topics that may not serve your brand, be it a business brand or a personal brand, in the long run, it may likely hurt your brand. So that's the reason why I believe some people, some businesses, some conglomerates, some businesses tend to keep away from certain issues. And remember, when we talk about the online space, we will not lose sight of algorithms. This is really important. I give you an instance. If every morning you wake up, you scroll or you surf the net for a certain topic, let's assume you always wake up to surf the net on issues like football, you will notice that over time, the algorithm will begin to push contents, topics relating or related to football to you, unsolicitedly, so to speak, simply because the artificial intelligence had garnered the information that this particular browser loves content on football. So over time, everything related to football is what you'll be getting.
What you see.
Even if the word is on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry we had to cut off like that, but thank you, Amaka, for joining us to talk about this topic. I'm sure you enjoyed this segment. New Day continues shortly after this break.
Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking. Events occur and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.